fantasy first pick.
Thunderstruck! Thunderstruck! Yeah, Thunderstruck!
Welcome into the Stadium Rant or the Fantasy Rant podcast presented by Stadium Rant. I haven't messed up the intro in a while. Let's get into it, boys. We got a fun one lined up today. We're going to go over all of the rookie quarterbacks, all the notable rookie quarterbacks. It's set to enter the draft in 2024. I am Dan Baker, accompanied by Mason Beck and Lee Cook. Evan is off this week, but he'll be back next week. Before we jump into the rookie quarterbacks here, though, just a quick piece of news I thought worth mentioning. Josh Reynolds just signed with the Broncos, 2 years, $14 million deal. I think with Jerry Jeudy leaving and really only Cortland Sutton and Marvin Mims other than him, Tim Patrick should be coming back as well. We'll see how healthy he is coming off of an ACL injury, back-to-back years with tough injuries. So they bring in Josh Reynolds. He was, he's not going to be a giant fantasy contributor, but I do think that it's worth bringing up. I think it takes away a little bit from Marvin Mims' value, maybe not in dynasty long term. But I think as far as redraft goes, throws a little bit of water on the Marvin Mims fire. I do think that Josh Reynolds could be worth a late, like last round pick if he is available. But that's if they bring in a quarterback. If Jarrett Stidham stays the quarterback, I am not interested in Josh Reynolds. Lee, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, I could see him as, a late round flyer. I think as far as Reynolds goes, I think it's certainly a downgrade, obviously, in the offense that he's going to be in. Potentially maybe a few more targets, but just the lack of touchdown opportunity. We'll see who they bring in, but I can't, at this point in the cycle, I can't see them really bringing in a game changer to be their quarterback unless they find a real diamond in the rough in the draft. So not all that excited, and I'm still pretty high on Marvin Mims. The ceiling is obviously much higher than Josh Reynolds. He's got a lower floor. I mean, Reynolds has shown that floor that he's an NFL wide receiver. I mean, he can get it done out there, but I think opportunity. Hopefully, it doesn't make neither one of them valuable. We know Cortland Sutton is still there. He's going to be the number one. It'll be interesting to see who the number 2 target getter is, but I would still lean towards Mims in the upside.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. Mims definitely has more upside. I think the Josh Reynolds move there is a downgrade for him from leaving that Detroit offense. But I think the real fantasy impact is that he might just take away a couple targets away from Sutton or Mims. But I don't think Reynolds is going to produce really any numbers on a consistent basis. He might have 1 or 2 weeks where he puts up some good numbers, but I don't think he's going to throw up numbers that are consistent that you're going to want to be starting him in your lineups.
For sure. And as far as the NFL goes, better off as a 3 than a 2 on any team. But, for where the Broncos are sitting right now in that wide receiver room, they needed a body and a vet. And I think that's going to at least give them that. So if they do end up drafting an NFL a rookie quarterback in the draft this year, I do think that is going to add a little bit of value to what that QB is going to be able to offer. All right. So we have touched on a few quarterbacks throughout the offseason here, done more deep dives on those quarterbacks. So we're going to go from the back to the front, start off with guys who are at least worth bringing up, but not necessarily at the top of everyone's list in terms of guys they want on their dynasty roster. So that being said, we are starting off with Michael Pratt. I am going to send it over to Lee. Kick it off with your Michael Pratt breakdown.
Yeah, so I mean, one, I may be a little bit higher on Michael Pratt than what a lot of people are. He's a small school guy. He won consistently, especially the last 2 years. Obviously, not before that, but the Cotton Bowl season, beat USC. 6'3", he's got good size. Pretty good touch on the ball from what I saw. He's willing to stand in the pocket, move around, but staying within that pocket. He's got sneaky mobility. So I think he could be a guy who could be a real value in the draft. And I was just curious. I went back and looked because, I mean, obviously the biggest game of his career was the Cotton Bowl against USC 2023. They won. Everybody remembers Tulane won. He didn't have a great statistical game passing the ball. He was only 8 of 17, 234 and 2 touchdowns, which isn't super exciting. He did add 83 yards on the ground. But what really kind of stood out to me there is he threw the game-winning touchdown pass with 10 seconds to go. So, those numbers don't blow you away. That USC defense wasn't great, but certainly a level above what they were playing in the American Athletic Conference. So, the guy's a winner. Obviously, he's going to need to be a backup. He's not going to need to come in and start right away, but you give him a couple years in a backup role to really learn the offense. I could see him being an average NFL starter at some point in his career, likely a career backup. But if he gets his shot, and 64, 66 quarterbacks started last season, so very likely that he will be starting at some point. I could see him surprising.
Yeah. I overall agree with the assessment there. I do think he's a little bit underrated, but at the same time, I don't think he offers enough upside in any one category. Like he's good at most things, but he's not excelling in any specific category, in my opinion. He's got above average mobility, like you said, kind of sneaky in that department. He can extend plays. He can throw on the run. At the same time, I didn't really see him excelling when he had to progress beyond his first read. But overall, good fundamentals, really nice touch on his balls, especially downfield. Once he puts a little air under it, I found that he was more accurate, which is a little bit unusual. But he's also willing to take some shots over the middle. He's gritty. He'll take some shots and still deliver a strong ball. Seems like a fierce competitor, like a guy that's really got that edge to him, like mentally. So all of those things that I like about his game. However, it's just like 6'2" dude, 215 or so, 217. Weighed in at the combine. It's just like there's nothing that's great about him. And that's really what I feel like no one's talking about him. There's not that one thing where you're like, okay, this guy does this incredibly. And that's fine. That's fine. But I think overall he's going to end up being a strong career backup.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't see him ever really getting that starting job. Like you said, he does do pretty good with the touch pass. Has good accuracy with that. His velocity though isn't great, so he's not going to be able to necessarily fit it into those tight windows, and shorter throws or anything like that. Yeah, like you said, he is a decent runner. He did through his collegiate career did pull off some sneaky little runs. But another thing that I saw with him is that he double clutches a lot, which does not really trend well in the NFL when you do that, unless are an elite runner and you can really fake people out with some double clutches. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. I could see him really just being a backup his whole career. And not just sometimes that's what's good for some guys, just to be a career backup and develop for a couple years, come in, maybe get a couple starts when the whoever their starter is injured. But yeah, I really don't see him ever having like a true fantasy value.
It's funny that you mentioned the double clutch because that was one of the biggest notes I had in the negatives. I'm scarred from Baker, and I still love Baker, but when he was with the Browns, there was so many of those plays where he was reading the play correctly. He should have gone to the read that he had, and he does this. It's not a pump fake even. It's just like this little hitch in the shoulder, and it drove me crazy because when I saw that, I would say at least 50% of the time after I see that little shoulder hitch, he's taking the sack. So it's a problem. It's definitely scarred me. And the other negatives that I had on him, you touched on it, Mason. I said average arm strength at best. I didn't see it being a huge problem, but like you said, it's not going to fit a ton of tight window throws. And then I also saw occasionally when post coverage, uh, the post snap coverage changed from what the pre snap read was, he was thrown off. He was thrown off his game. He looked a little bit unsure in his reads, in his progressions. And I do think that overall will have a big effect on him. All right. So for player style comp, I had Gardner Minshew. Lee, what did you have?
Chase Daniel, which with calling him a career backup, I feel like it kind of fits the mold. I saw a lot of Chase Daniel's game, watching him.
Okay, I like that. Mason?
Yeah, I'm gonna kind of touch off what you said. I think he's a far worse version of Baker Mayfield. I mean, you know me, I love Bakeman.
Right. You're a
Uh,
huge Baker guy.
yeah, I think they're similar play style in certain ways, but just doesn't necessarily have the skills that Baker does.
Okay, fair enough. For projected landing spot, I had the Patriots, but in the third round, and that's if they do not take another rookie quarterback in the first. Maybe they trade back or with Minnesota, or maybe they take Marvin Harrison Jr. and ruin everyone's dreams. Um, and then I had also Jets in the third or Titans in the fourth as a backup to Will Levis.
I had him going to the Saints maybe in like the fourth round. Obviously, Saints are locked in with Derek Carr for 2 more years. If you look at the dead cap, there's no way really out of that contract um, until those 2 years are done. But I mean, a guy like him who is how we talked about, he looks more like a backup. He's someone who could maybe develop behind a vet. And, Carr was dealing with a lot of injury concerns last year. And, drafting a QB in the fourth isn't necessarily a high risk choice. So I could see him going there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you stole that one from me, Mason, because I have two, and both are places he could be a backup for a while. New Orleans fits, Louisiana, staying pretty close by tends to happen a lot of times in drafts. The other one I had would be the Rams. We don't know what's happening with Stetson Bennett. We don't know how long Matthew Stafford's going to be there. And I think as far as the best possible place he could go would be to go sit behind Stafford and Sean McVay's offense for a couple of years. That would bump up his draft stock a little bit for me if he went to the Rams.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I agree with it being ideal for him. I don't know if they go that route since they brought in Jimmy G to be the backup. And personally, I feel like, Stetson Bennett is probably same level right now as Michael Pratt. But I do agree that it would be ideal for Pratt. Let's move on to Spencer Rattler here. We got Spencer Rattler. The positives I had listed: he's got solid mechanics both in the pocket and on the run. He's got good pocket presence, really has a feel for when the blitz is coming, makes adjustments. But he's got that decent mobility enough to extend plays, but not enough to have any designed runs for him. So don't weigh that into the mobility. Don't weigh that into your fantasy opinion. He's not going to gain you too many yards on the ground. Not going to run in too many touchdowns to the point where he's giving you even like a strong baseline week to week. But I do think it's there enough to help extend plays if his wide receivers aren't open or if first read, second read isn't there. What do you guys got for positives on Spencer Rattler?
I mean, I don't have a ton of positives on him, but he does work great in the pocket. He definitely is a good pocket passer, and something that comes with his being good in the pocket is that he's not afraid to take a hit to get the throw off, which sometimes doesn't transition into the NFL as good when there's a guy coming at you that hits a lot harder and is a lot faster. Might force some turnovers there. But I mean, he does show promise in the pocket, and then he is pretty patient, and he does let a lot of routes develop instead of just trying to force early plays. He really does try to let his routes develop.
Yes, I would agree. With what you guys are saying. And one thing that stood out to me, and it's one of those things, you can't teach size, you can't teach arm talent, and he has a great arm. He's got a really nice throwing motion, and he has well above average arm talent for the NFL. He's accurate with that, which can be uncommon. When you can put those two things together, you can work around a lot of other things, and you can teach a lot of things. And again, he stands in the pocket, kind of echoing what you guys said. He's not scared to try to make some plays, and that kind of, that's a pro and a con. He's not scared to make plays, but he can be borderline reckless. That kind of contributed to some of the bigger mistakes that he made. He's short, for the NFL, and I still think kind of progressing through the reads is going to be a big thing that he's going to have to be taught.
Yep. That was one of the bigger ones that I had there. willingness to throw into tight windows can get him in trouble. 20 interceptions in the last 2 seasons. I do think he will struggle with more exotic coverages, those plays where I'm talking about where the post snap does not match up with the pre snap read. I think that's going to get him in some trouble. And then the other thing that I had is that nearly every snap that I saw was from the shotgun. Not always going to be a killer at the NFL level. Some NFL teams do the same thing where the vast majority is from the shotgun. However, it's not a positive, So something to think about there. Mason, did you want to touch on any of the negatives?
Yeah, I mean, just his velocity on his throws aren't the best either, and I saw him throw off the back leg a lot whenever pressure. And yeah, like I was just touching, he is willing to take hits and stay and try to stay in the pocket, but that did lead to him throwing off his back leg a lot, and that really does take off some accuracy, take off some velocity that might turn into a lot of interceptions because at the NFL level, you know, tiny bit less velocity than what you're wanting can easily turn into a pick.
100%. All right. So for the player style comp, I had slightly taller Bryce Young. Not a shining compliment, especially after seeing the first year in the NFL for old Bryce there. Lee?
Yeah, so I saw a lot of Sam Howell in him, and that's a guy that 2 years ago, 2 years removed, it was Sam Howell and Spencer Rattler. The year before they both, well, 2 years before Rattler, but they were projected as the top two quarterbacks. I see a lot of the playing style. I see a lot of the recklessness, the mobility. I mean, I see a lot of Sam Howell there.
Yeah, honestly, I had a really tough one on this one. I was looking at all his tape, and I couldn't really find a player that I honestly thought really fit his player comp. So, my answer to that one is not available.
Not available. All right. We got the projected landing spots. This name's gonna come up a decent amount, but I got the Broncos in the third round. Again, just don't see a world where Jared Stidham's starting. Los Angeles Rams, like Lee was saying, as a backup there. I think in the third, fourth round, I do think that's late enough to the point where they could start looking at him. And after Michael Pratt, I do think that Spencer Rattler and the rest of the QBs we'll be talking about are definitely upgrades over Stetson Bennett. And then I did put the Steelers as well in the third round. Even though they brought in Russ, that's a 1-year deal. Justin Fields, unless they want to give him that 5th-year extension or give him a big old extension of their own creating, I think that the Steelers still need to look towards the future for the quarterback position. So all third-round picks for those three teams, but that's where I got.
I have him going in the third to Dallas. Dak's situation is a little uncertain there. Rattler coming into college was a very high prospect. I believe he was a QB1 out of his class of high school as far as prospects go. So there is still some potential there. He's done a lot of flashes. And I just think, Dak could be gone next year. And, if you leave Rattler the year to develop behind him, maybe he does develop into something. Dallas could give him a year or so to be their starter if they do move on from Dak.
Yeah.
So I had two, kind of similar spots that would be for him, both in the state of Florida. Miami, loves the deep ball. McDaniel loves to throw the deep ball. He has a great arm. Tua's, did much better, as far as health concerns this past season. But who knows, once you get that concussion history. And the other would be Tampa. I know they just brought Baker back, but a backup for Baker. See some similarities there, but you've got to kind of start grooming a guy. And I don't know that he's going to go in the third. Just with the depth of this class, I see him more going in a fourth round, late fourth round. Maybe one of those trades back up, or maybe he just falls to him.
Okay. I mean, I think the next quarterback we're talking about is a clear tier jump for sure. But like Michael Pratt or Spencer Rattler, who do you guys got?
I would go Rattler just because I think there's a lot more upside. He could obviously be the worst one, but I do think there's a higher ceiling for him than there is Pratt.
Lee?
Yeah, I think I would agree. The arm talent is the biggest thing that Pratt's really kind of missing. You can't teach it. the size does concern me a little bit, but I do see a little bit of a higher ceiling. Rattler's he's got that pedigree as well. So I would go Rattler.
That's a sweep for Rattler. All right, so we are going to move on to Michael Penix Jr. That's why I was saying there is a clear tier jump here. Michael Penix Jr., we didn't get to talk about him in the past. 6'2", 216, 23.8 years old right now. Didn't mention it earlier, but I'll mention it now. Spencer Rattler, 23.9 years old. Michael Pratt, 22.5 years old. But we're talking about Penix here. Positives, arm strength. It's there. He's just got the upper body that delivers a strong, accurate ball. The one thing that I noticed though, I feel like he could even deliver more behind his ball because I think that his legs don't always match up with his top half. Like his arms doing most of the work sometimes. Kind of like Mason was saying on Spencer Rattler there. I think sometimes you see that he is just sitting on the back foot rather than driving off the back foot. That's going to make a huge difference for him. But regardless, he was still able to deliver the ball downfield consistently. And that was my next note. Not afraid to take those shots. He gives his wide receivers a chance to make plays downfield. And at the NFL level, if he's given the weapons, that is going to go a long way for him. Uh, the other positive I had, it kind of coincides with the negative. Great ball to the outside. I did not see him attack the middle of the field very frequently, but he has a great ball to the outside, and he can fit balls into tight windows. Again, albeit mostly on the outside. Would like to see him try to fit those tight window throws a little bit more over the middle. Those were the main positives that I had for Michael Penix Jr. What do you think, Mason?
Yeah, I mean, the arm strength, I think he's probably number 2 in the class of what I think of arm strength after Caleb Williams. And just the velocity off of his throws, if you watch him, those balls come out so quick. And I just think, yeah, like you're saying, he can hit those tight windows. He always gives his receivers at least a chance. They may not be the most perfect throws every single time, but he's always going to give his receivers at least a chance at the ball. And yeah, I mean, just his deep ball accuracy is pretty insane. I mean, watching some highlights, he hit him right on the spot almost every single time when it's deep. And I just think, when you got a deep ball accuracy like that, you're asking for some big plays to come up. So, if he is a starter, which he most likely will be at some point in his career, at least given a shot, I just think with that, there's so much upside with having that good of a deep threat.
Yeah.
Yes, you guys kind of touched on my top 2 for sure already. The arm strength obviously is a big plus. The deep ball accuracy, just really dropped the ball in the bucket quite a bit, on tape. And if not, you didn't see a ton of just completely errant deep balls either. If it wasn't right in the bucket, he was at least giving his receiver a chance. The other thing is he really seemed to be able to go through his reads, go through progressions. Saw a lot of second and third read throws, which in such a dynamic college offense, you don't see a ton. A lot of times you just see that first read being wide open or a guy just sticking to the first read. So that was what really stood out in addition to what you guys already mentioned. And kind of, with that, I'll segue, right into the cons there. I think the biggest one is the injuries, obviously. 4 season-ending injuries. 2 ACL tears and AC joint separation in each shoulder. So 2018, 19, 2020, and 2021, all 4 of those years he experienced season-ending injuries. That's a concern. I mean, if you're getting hurt that frequently in college, how are you going to stand up in the NFL with the best athletes, that this country has to offer? Very concerned with that. The age as well, 24. It's not horrible for a quarterback, but he is one of the older guys there. And kind of the last thing I would say is the struggled with pressure a little bit. Again, that's something that you really have to be able to do in the NFL because there is going to be less time to make those passes. It seemed like when the pocket broke down, that was a major problem. He's not a big improviser. just struggle to make plays, under high pressure, and that's the biggest area. In addition to staying healthy, I think he's going to have to improve on to be successful in the NFL.
Fair enough. Mason, what's some of the negatives you had listed?
I mean, my main one was he does not handle pressure the best, and if you do have someone like Nick Bosa running at you, a lot faster, a lot stronger than any guy he's ever faced, that it can change up a lot, force a lot of turnovers. When you don't handle the pressure that well. And another thing, I was talking about how he has great velocity off of his ball, but it also translates. He didn't necessarily do the best with intermediate passes because he doesn't have the best touch pass to, get it over corners, make these little sideline throws or, right over the middle, get it over a linebacker or something. That is a little bit of a problem that could turn to a lot of interceptions.
Yeah, 100%. You guys touched on a lot of the negatives that I had listed here. One of the biggest ones that I didn't hear you guys say was the throwing motion. He has a weird throwing motion, to put it plainly. Is it unorthodox? It's long, which is the biggest problem. I don't have a problem if you have an unorthodox throwing motion, as long as you get the ball out quick. He does not do that. That is going to hurt him with those plays where he had a split second longer because you're in college and you don't have elite athletes coming at you. That is going to make a difference especially in his first few starts. I could see him maybe having some ugly fumbles just because he's used to having a split second longer to make these throws. The other thing, Mason, you touched on it, the touch pass. We already talked about the unwillingness to throw to the middle of the field. And then, we talked about his base not lining up with his top half. I do think that's going to lead some of those 50-50 balls he threw to Romo Dunze. Those are not going to go his way in the NFL quite as frequently as it is going to go in the NFL. And then the last thing, he's not mobile really at all. I think that there's the ability to understand open space, and he can take advantage of that, but he's not a guy that is going to create space with his legs. All right. Oh, and then the last thing, he did have great wide receivers to work with and not the strongest competition of a conference. So I do think that plays to his benefit. Not going to fully hold that against him, kind of similar to like the whole, like Justin Fields argument. He had incredible wide receivers to work with, which I think, when you have all that separation at the collegiate level, that makes it look a little bit better than things actually are. And I said last thing, actually, this is the last thing. He did not face pressure frequently. He only faced pressure on 24.5% of his dropbacks. That was the second lowest of any quarterback with 100 dropbacks. That we'll see. I can't fully hold that against him. Maybe you guys were already talking about how he doesn't excel against pressure. We just didn't see it too frequently in that offense, in that conference. For player style comp, Mason, who's the player style comp you got for Michael Penix Jr.?
I mean, I'm going to take the easy one, and I kind of hate saying it because they're both lefties, but Tua. I see a lot of Tua in him. I mean, I don't know, just watching it, I just saw Tua, and then I was like, oh, wait, they're both lefties. That's so basic to say, but I did see some Tua.
So I've got two, and that one is kind of the perfect world scenario, a bit of a stretch. But I saw some CJ Stroud in how, the deep ball, how he's able to be accurate on those. But I think the more realistic comp and where he probably will end up in the NFL is Jacoby Brissett.
Interesting.
I do see some.
Do you think the production will match that, or is it just like style comp, player style comp?
I could see both, honestly, but I just the style, he really resembled Brissett to me. And I mean, let's be real, Jacoby hasn't had the most opportunity to be a starter, but when he's been on the field, he's been productive. Maybe he gets another chance, to start at least for a little while in New England this year. But I could see a similar career arc for Penix as well.
Okay. So for mine, I had lefty Jared Goff. I said he has with a weird throwing motion and less touch. Jared Goff has better touch, better ball placement. I'll say because I do think Penix is accurate, but I don't necessarily see him always leading his wide receiver in the best ball placement in order for him to make the play after the catch. But I do think that overall, that lack of mobility, the strong enough arm to get things done, but just lacks that like X factor to really take a team to the next level. I think that's where I have him in terms not only of his player style comp, but what his production comp will end up being. For the projected landing spot, I said you're going to hear it a lot. I do think that if Denver is desperate, desperate for a quarterback. I could see them reaching at 112 or maybe trading back a few spots and still grabbing Penix. I also listed the Vikings. If they don't move up to get JJ or if JJ doesn't drop to them, I could see them settling for Michael Penix Jr. And then a team that Mason and Lee brought up earlier, I said the Saints in the second round. It would be the 13th pick in the second round, 45 overall. I could see him landing there. Lazy one, the Dolphins. The two is in the contract year, another lefty quarterback, got a strong arm. You know how they can utilize their players downfield, create mismatches with that speed. Michael Penix would be the guy that could take advantage of that in this draft, and they wouldn't have to spend up in order to get him in the draft. So I do like that landing spot for him. That's a little bit ideal, though.
Yeah, my kind of realistic or ideal is Vikings. I mean, I really want him to go there because, like we were talking about, he's really good at putting up those 50-50 balls. And when you got a guy who's great at that and Justin Jefferson, I mean, things are going to happen. I mean, Jefferson's going to make those 50-50 catches more than anybody else. I could see maybe him falling to the second round and Vikings trading up in the second round or, maybe even taking him in the first. I don't think Penix necessarily is a first round pick worthy, but a lot of teams are desperate for quarterbacks right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I had Denver as well as kind of my ideal is my top choice for him. I mean, one, the opportunity will be there. Denver does have a lot of holes to fill. Um, there's some JJ talk, and we'll get into that later, but let's assume they don't have a shot at those top four guys with their first round pick. Penix would be a solid second round pick and a guy who would come in and likely be the starter over Jared Stidham immediately. The other one I had would be the Raiders, so staying in the same division. I don't think Aiden O'Connell is anything beyond a backup. Minshew's there, but it would be a competition, and I feel like Penix would probably beat out Minshew and be the starter week one there as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then for his Superflex rookie draft value, I have him as a mid to late second round pick. I just dropped in the comments a site. This is a website that posts all of the live rookie mock draft results that they do. It's ran by a guy named Ryan Miner. Go follow him on Twitter. He is a great resource for this. It is truly what I value most in terms of rookie ADPs because these are live drafts. He fills them up entirely with dynasty heads that are here all season long that are obsessed with it because clearly they're doing rookie mock drafts right now. And pretty much from the time the Super Bowl ends, he kicks this off. So very reliable. Check out the comments to visit that website and see some of these rookie ADPs. Right now, I'm seeing Michael Penix Jr. He has been listed at the 19th pick in Superflex League. So that is going to be your 207 mid second round.
I have him leaning a little earlier than that, especially if he does go to a team like the Vikings. Just with the talent around him, I think it's worth a little risk of drafting him probably like 203 to 205, somewhere around there.
Okay.
Yeah, I lean more towards Mason there. I could see anywhere from 201 to 206. And I know, we've got a lot of depth at receiver, but with the lack of running back depth, we'll see where they land. And who's able to move up as the running backs. But quarterbacks are just so valuable in Superflex. And if he goes to a Minnesota, a Denver, a place where he has a legitimate chance to be the starter in week 1, he's a guy that has that potential to be a long-term starter. Knock on wood, he can stay healthy. But
Right.
I think he's worth that risk. And I mean, unless you feel like you're drafting a running back who's going to be the starter, there's a little bit of safety there, especially if he gets top, 1 to 2, first to second round draft capital. Yeah, I could see him anywhere from 201 to 205.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think overall he can move up depending on the landing spot. We'll just have to see where the cards fall here. So we're going to Bo Nix next. 6'2", 214, 24 years old, coming out of Oregon. Some of the positives I have here: arm strength. He can make all of the throws. Guy's got the wide set frame. Looks the part, kind of like a Will Levis type build. He's got the accuracy to all parts of the field. I felt that he was very decisive. He gets the ball out quick, maybe sometimes to his detriment, but overall gets the ball out quick is something that I value. Seems to be, part of that Oregon offense where they have those quick hitters in the offense. It's kind of schemed into the offense there. But I think a lot of NFL offenses, especially with like the cover 2 shell that's been running in most of the NFL, I do think that is something that the NFL is starting to do more and more. So he'll be accustomed to that. I thought his pocket presence was solid. He only took 11 sacks in 2 years. That was over 834 dropbacks. Only took 11 sacks. Again, could be product of the offense, but overall, happy to see that. Turnover adverse. 45 touchdowns and 3 interceptions in the last year on 467 pass attempts. That is incredible. Obviously, want a guy who's not going to give the ball to the other team. And then I think that he does a good job of reading defenses pre-snap as well. He takes a look at the defense, makes his adjustments, and adjusts accordingly. Also, good deep ball. We talked about the arm strength, but frequently, he doesn't throw the ball downfield as frequently as other quarterbacks. But when he did, 52.3% completion percentage on 20-plus yard attempts. That was 4th in the FBS. And on top of it, on those attempts, 12 touchdowns, 1 interception on those 44 attempts. So all of those things mixed in with a little bit of mobility. Again, not going to be a guy where they're really designing runs for him, but he will extend plays and hit players downfield. I think all of those things really mix into a solid prospect here, and a guy that I don't think is really talked enough about personally. I will kick it to Mason next here. What you got?
I think he's the most underrated quarterback in this class. I mean,
Let's go.
I don't think he's the best, but I definitely think he's very underrated. I mean, he shows that even when the pocket does collapse, like you were saying, he doesn't take sacks much. He's good enough. He's very mobile. He can move out, extend some plays. Another thing I saw, he can throw at many different arm angles. He doesn't just necessarily take the traditional throw every time. Sometimes he can change up his arm angle and make some weird throw that you don't normally see most quarterbacks do. And he's got a very quick release. The ball comes out very quick, which is very good for short and intermediate passes. Like you're saying, he didn't take a ton of shots down the field, but I think he is going to be more of those guys that just gets consistent short to medium passes, and then every once in a while is just going to throw one deep, and he has the accuracy and enough strength to do it. It's not, he doesn't have elite level arm strength, but it's definitely good enough to make these deep passes.
Yeah, I'm not as high on him as Mason, but I do like his game. I don't know if I would call him the most underrated quarterback. I don't know how well it's going to translate to the NFL, but he is a very good athlete. He's able to make plays outside of the pocket. Eyes are normally staying downfield. He's staying with the play, and he's consistent as far as just being a quick release when he needs to be. He's accurate. And as you guys kind of echoed, he doesn't make a ton of mistakes. He made more early in his career, which you would expect from any quarterback. I looked up the numbers because watched him at Auburn. It felt like it was more, but it wasn't a ton of interceptions. He had 7 apiece for a couple of years. One thing that really stood out to me, so he didn't run the ball as much this past season. But if you go back 1 year removed, his first year at Oregon, he had 510 yards rushing, 14 rushing touchdowns. He also caught 2 passes for 36 yards and caught another touchdown. So in his last 2 years in college, he had 20 rushing touchdowns. Not a ton of yards, 700 combined. But again, he didn't run the ball as much this past season. Kind of seen by design. But he's a guy who can run it enough that threat is definitely going to help him on the NFL level. Between him and Penix, I'm much more excited about Penix. I feel like they are their own tier. JJ was in that tier, and it seems like he's kind of inched out of it. He's kind of in that clear second tier by himself, in my opinion. I'm not putting him in that top 3, but Penix and Nix are those next 2 after JJ. And I like Penix more at the NFL level, but I think Nix is a solid backup who can come in and be a playmaker, when asked to.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. I think this is as an NFL GM, I would value taking Bo Nix late first, early second, over reaching for JJ McCarthy, having to trade up multiple firsts to get into that top 10 pick. That's personally where I see it. I might be a little bit further down on JJ McCarthy. We're going to talk about him next. But overall, I don't think there is a big tier jump, if any tier jump, between Bo Nix and JJ. I personally would more so have Bo and JJ in their own tier in comparison to Penix and Bo Nix in their own tier. But that's just where I sit. We had a comment come in for sportsmanlike misconduct. Our boy, if I'm the Bears, he says I'm taking Bo at 1. Might be a little bit of hyperbole here, but it seems we got a Bo Nix fan. Bo Nix, we were just talked about Michael Penix on Face Off, that the ADP that I was just talking about last player. Bo Nix is 2 picks ahead of Michael Penix right now, based on where the people are taking him. That's going to sit at the 205. I do think that, again, the landing spot will really, really matter for both of these guys. If one of them ends up in a very favorable spot, then I will probably switch where I have them ranked in terms of dynasty ranking. But overall, I think 2 solid players that aren't really being talked about quite enough with the next top 4 quarterbacks available in this rookie class. Let's move on to the negatives, though. Mason, I'm going to send it your way for some of the negatives on Bo Nix.
My big thing was, Oregon uses sideline cues. They don't necessarily run a traditional NFL style offense as far as play calling goes. And, that's something that, could transition a little rough if he doesn't necessarily know how to run a traditional offense. Besides that, sometimes he didn't necessarily, like most of his sacks, he didn't necessarily understand that there was pressure coming. And those are why the sacks happened. I mean, obviously he escaped a lot, but there was some times where, he definitely could have gotten out of it and didn't realize it. Honestly, I didn't think I liked Bo Nix as much until the last couple days. I've been looking more into him. I really, really like Bo Nix.
Lee?
So, yeah, kind of just expanding on that a little bit, I think pocket presence was the biggest thing. He is much better. Everything I saw on tape, he's much better out of the pocket than in the pocket. His footwork in the pocket, being able to recognize the blitzes that are coming, stepping into his throws from the pocket was a bit of an issue. A lot of back foot falling away throws. That's where it really affected his accuracy. Yes. Very few quarterbacks can get away with that. Very few quarterbacks have the Patrick Mahomes type of arm that you can just back leg it and throw it, 40 yards on a dime where it needs to go. He does not have that elite arm strength. The footwork is going to have to improve. The pocket presence is going to have that. That's the biggest area where he would be working between draft and the start of the season.
Yep. I mean, you guys hit it on the head. The stats to back that up, Bo Nix, in terms of anybody, the leader had 212 dropbacks under pressure. Obviously, you don't want that. But when you take a smaller sample size, 20% of that 212, according to PFF, Bo Nix faced pressure by far the least of any FBS quarterback, 14.8%. In those limited opportunities that we saw, there were some downside. However, he did complete 72.5% of his passes against or while under pressure, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions. I think he did a good enough job of adjusting to it. But to Lee's point, the footwork is the biggest thing that I saw as a negative, inconsistent base. Sometimes I saw his feet leading in a direction and his arm going in a completely separate direction. Obviously, not ideal. I think that can be fixed at the NFL level. Get him some good coaches that really enforce that. That could be fixed honestly before he takes a snap on the field. Just like really trying to reinforce leading with your lower body and then having the top half follow what your bottom half's doing. And then the other thing I had is just what we touched on. He didn't face pressure enough to have a consistent read. I gave you the numbers while he was under pressure, but 63 of his 426 dropbacks in 2023 were under pressure. That's not a good enough sample size to have a consistent reading. So the pressure, be it what it may, and the numbers under pressure being what they are, I think that there is room to interpret what he will be at the next level while under pressure. And, that's not going to be settled until really we see him take some NFL snaps. Let's get on to the player style comps, though. Mason, you've been saying it. What do we got here for the player style comp?
Well, my more controversial one is where he's landing, but this player comp, I'm going Jalen Hurts. I mean, not as athletic as Jalen Hurts, but I don't know. I see a lot of Hurts, being able to run out of the pocket, is able to make these tight throws, has good arm velocity, not necessarily the greatest arm strength, but has enough accuracy to open up the deep ball. I don't know. I was just watching his tape and I saw a lot of Jalen Hurts. Is he going to be as good as Jalen Hurts? I wouldn't say that, but I see a lot of Jalen Hurts, honestly. Could be controversial, but I do.
That is interesting because I don't not see it. You already touched it. It's not quite as mobile as Jalen Hurts is. That's a hard, threshold to reach. But I do kind of see it a little bit. It's very interesting. Lee, what do you think?
A slower Daniel Jones.
Oh boy,
my comparison.
That is eight. Oh, what'd you say, Mason?
So that's a far drop from my comparison.
Yes, a steep drop. I think I got one a little bit like splitting two sides of it here. I have shorter Trevor Lawrence with slightly less arm strength. I think he's got that same type of mobility. I think that he has good arm strength and, might not necessarily always have the best platform for making throws, but can make all of the throws on an NFL field. That's really interesting to hear such like Jalen Hurts, Trevor Lawrence, and Daniel Jones. Take those comps for what they are. If you haven't heard us say it in past episodes, these are player comps. You're not going to hit this player comp 100% on the nose. Take it for what it is. Don't hear any of these names and go, okay, this is the player I'm getting. Yeah. Evaluate the player, make your own assessments, but it's fun to drop some comps. This is what we're here for. So, projected landing spot, I have the New York Jets as a potential landing spot. Obviously, got Aaron Rodgers there. Expensive Aaron Rodgers, 40 years old Aaron Rodgers, need a contingency plan for the Jets. So I have them there. And then two teams we've already talked about, Broncos and Raiders. I think all of those teams are contenders to go and get Bo Nix if they really see that he's worth the draft pick.
So kind of in line with my slower Daniel Jones. I got him going to the Giants.
Oh no. If Bo Nix goes to the Giants, Michael Penix takes a jump over him almost no matter where he lands.
All right,
Mason?
hear me out on this.
All right.
Commanders.
Oh no, Lee. How do you feel?
All right.
Only way he makes it to the Commanders if it's a Kirk Cousins like drop and he drops to like the late fourth round.
No. So my thought of it is that there's a lot of teams trying to move up into the top three. There's a lot, and it may sound bad, but like look at what Niners traded up for Trey Lance. 3 firsts. I mean, I could see. Why wouldn't you want to give that up? And Commanders have the second pick in the second round, and I could definitely see Bo Nix falling there. Even if Commanders don't trade away the 102, maybe they go bring in Marvin Harrison Jr. And I don't know. Something in my brain tells me that Bo Nix is going to go in the second round early, and that Commanders could easily move away from the 102 if they get a big enough of a trade offer.
That is really interesting because I mean, like you said, so right now I'm seeing, according to Tankathon, they have the 36th pick in the second round. Is that right?
The 40th, yeah.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay.
Well,
I thought they had the one. I thought they had the 202 for some reason.
Well, I mean,
No,
they have
it
the
was
102.
the 3 teams were tied, so there was a coin flip, or
Oh.
no, the tiebreaker. They got the second one, but it rotates for the next rounds because they had the same.
Okay, well, still, I could
Gotcha.
still see Bo Nix falling to that point, and
Yeah,
I mean,
no, I think that's completely fair. Right now on PFF's big board, they have Bo Nix at 33. That's 3 spots off of where the Commander's second round pick is. I do see what you're saying. Maybe they go Marvin Harrison Jr. with that second overall pick. I highly doubt it, but maybe they do, and maybe you hit the nail on the head there. So I do think that's interesting.
So
And
I'm going to
Lee,
save my
thanks for
reaction
bringing
for
that up.
the YouTube run over. I know we're running a little bit short on time, but tune in, stay with us for the after hour. I will react to that.
I like it. Already giving us a little preemptive strike here. I like it. So we have the player style comp, the landing spot, Superflex rookie draft value. I personally have him going mid-second round. I think with a great landing spot that can jump up. But right now, mid-second round for Bo Nix is where I see him.
I've been super high up on Bo Nix, so I'm saying like 201, 203. Depending on the team's needs in those spots. I mean, I'd be okay. If he does go Commanders or does go like Vikings or a very good landing spot, I would willingly take him 201.
Yeah.
205, 206.
I like it. Mid-second. All right. We move to JJ McCarthy, 6'2 and a half feet tall, 219 at the combine. I will say that based on his measurements from the Wolverines website, he was listed as 6'3", 202. So definitely packed on some LBs there before the combine. He is one of the youngest quarterbacks in this draft class at 21.1 years old. Positives I had for him: solid mechanics. He's got a strong enough arm to make most of the NFL throws, if not all. Strong throws on the run to both sides, which is a big benefit there. He's pretty accurate overall. Turnover adverse, only 9 interceptions in the last 2 seasons off of 656 pass attempts. The mobility, great short area burst. Not the top end speed that you're looking for necessarily, but very great short area burst. He ran a 6.82 second 3-cone drill, which was 91st percentile amongst QBs since 2011. 4.23 second 20-yard shuttle, that's 72nd percentile, again for QBs since 2011. And one of my biggest notes I have in all caps: brass balls. This guy's not afraid to take a hit. He'll stay in the pocket. He'll throw over the middle. He'll throw tight windows. All of those things that you equate to a guy that's gutsy. This guy's got it. I do think those are some nice intangibles to have in your quarterback that can lead to some mistakes. So we'll see how that goes to the next level. He was just mainly relied on as a field general, a game manager at the collegiate level. And that is honestly one of the bigger red flags to me, that when you're not leaned on as the guy at the collegiate level, are you going to be leaned on as the guy at the NFL level? What are some of the positives you guys had? Lee, you can kick it off.
Yeah, I mean accuracy. Specifically the middle of the field. The slants, the digs. A lot of those routes you see a lot in the NFL. Those look good. I did have the toughness, being able to take a hit in the pocket, and you still get the ball out. And he's pretty quick and agile for his size. So those are kind of what stood out as the pros. I do think his processing through multiple reads, we didn't see a lot of it. Between it being such a run heavy offense and just the style of play. So whether he can do that or not, I'm not sure. And then, when he's in those uncomfortable positions, like I said, he's able to hang in the pocket and get the ball out. But those late in the down throws and throws from an uncomfortable position, I really didn't see a ton that impressed me there. Glad he has the heart to do it, but he's yeah, we'll see. I can't believe how highly he's going these days.
Mason?
Yeah, I'm not the biggest on JJ McCarthy, but something I did see is, he is pretty agile for his size, can definitely break off some runs. He can throw outside the pocket as well, and he is pretty good throwing over the middle of the field. Outside can be a little questionable, but over the middle of the field, he's shown a lot of promise there. On the downsides, though, he wasn't really asked to do a ton in that offense. It was a very run-based, ground-based offense, ground and pound. We know how Harbaugh runs. So there is a lot of worry with that. His size is also not the biggest for a quarterback, and, that's a little worrying when he didn't show to protect himself too much when he was making these runs. And then another thing is that he throws to his first read a lot. And when he didn't, he seemed to struggle checking down his second and third reads. And that can be a big problem in the NFL when, if guys watching your eyes, that's how you give up interceptions.
100%. That's what I have here too. Literally the top note. He telegraphs passes? He locks onto that first wide receiver. When forced to a second, he shows a little bit of struggle. The other thing that I had here, does not have great touch. I didn't see nearly any touch passes that really, went for a big gain. Um, like you said, only relied on as a game manager. And we talked about it, but 202 listed in college, got up to 219. Let's see if that weight sticks. He's going to stop focusing on the combine, on measurables, and he's going to start focusing on real life NFL drills. Let's see if he can keep that weight up. If he drops back down to 202 at 6'2.5", that is a very low BMI. I'd be worried about him taking some of those hits at the NFL level. So, Lee, what do you got here?
Yeah, I mean, kind of already covered my cons, and I would agree, kind of what you're saying there. I mean, just game manager, man. And this is not a knock on this guy, because successful NFL career, and if he's put in the right position with a ton of talent around him, I do think he could win. But he's Alex Smith. I mean, he doesn't wow you anywhere. We'll see. He could still, he could be one of those guys who didn't really get a chance to show everything he's got in college. But I feel like the combine and the pro day numbers, specifically the pro day where people are just gushing over him, don't match up with what I saw on tape.
Yeah.
How dare you slander Alex Smith like that?
And one quick note, based off of a rookie break or a quarterback breakdown from one of the guys that was mentioned earlier as a player comp, Chase Daniels mentioned in his rookie breakdown that he was ranked 66th in the FBS in terms of pass attempts on third down. He wasn't even relied, and again, that can be part of the offensive scheme. Michigan had a lot of success this year in the run game, not forced into a lot of long third downs. But when you're not relied on even at third down to like make those plays for your team, extend the sticks, it's a little bit worrisome. So that is going to wrap it up for the radio broadcast. If you guys are in it for the hour over in Atlanta, we appreciate you guys listening. Make sure you check into the Stadium Rant YouTube channel. We got a lot more to cover here. Drake May, Jaden Daniels, and Caleb Williams still yet to cover. We'll run through that and also the projected landing spots and rookie draft value for JJ McCarthy. So appreciate you guys. Have a good rest of your week if that's where you're tuning out. If
Go
you're still
Dogs.
here, hey, go Dogs. If you're here with us on the YouTube channel where we're keeping it rolling here, we got the player style comp up next. I think mine's a little bit. I'm interested to see where you guys have him. I'll go last on this one. Mason, what do you have for the player style comp for JJ
I have
McCarthy?
a more agile version of Tannehill.
That's that's what I have.
Yeah, okay.
That's exactly what I have, and I
Okay,
don't
well-
even necessarily think it's more agile because like Tannehill came out as of college as a wide receiver. Dude made some plays with the legs. But I love your comp. Great comp.
Yes.
I already said mine. I mean, I'm
Hey, yours is Alex Smith. You slandered Alex Smith.
All right, so projected landing spot. I mean, it's kind of obvious. It feels like low hanging fruit, but Minnesota Vikings been the talk of the town. One of the reasons why they made the moves to get an additional first round pick this year is supposedly to trade it away, move up, get JJ McCarthy. We'll see where they move up, who their trade partner is to go and get him. I personally think if there's any hope of them, getting Drake May at 103 from the Patriots, I would much rather do that than trade up to 104 and get JJ McCarthy. But we'll see where the cards land. The other projected landing spot, talked about it a ton, but the Denver Broncos with the 12th overall pick, I think that they would be a great landing spot. And I should have mentioned this too. The Vikings have the 11th pick. They don't trade up. I can absolutely see the Vikings taking him. The Jets also have the 10th pick right ahead of them, but I have them listed as third because they got their guy right now and they have other glaring needs, especially on the offensive line. Really think they need to revamp that in order to have some success this year. And they could be win now if Aaron Rodgers stays healthy and the defense performs how it was in the second half last year. What do you guys have for the projected landing spot? I'll send it Lee's way first this time.
Yeah, I do think somebody's going to trade up for him, and I know the Broncos and the Vikings have been talked about a lot, but I'm going to go back to the Raiders. They're that other team that really needs a quarterback of the future. I could see them. A lot of times, it's a team that we don't necessarily hear about or expect that actually trades up and makes the move. So I got them going to Vegas.
Great point.
I have him going to Denver. I think just him and a Sean Payton offense would kind of work pretty well. And, I saw a lot of rumors that Cardinals are kind of shopping the 104 around, and I could definitely see the Broncos trading up to the 104.
Yeah, I mean, they've made plenty of mistakes at the quarterback position before, so why not make another one? All right, so that moves us on to the Superflex rookie draft value. I think I have him a touch later than you guys might, but I have him at the 109. Got Caleb, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Rome Odunze, Brock Bowers, and then I do have Brian Thomas listed ahead of JJ McCarthy as well, putting him at the 109.
Yeah, I got him going in between Bo Nix and Penix, to be honest. So I have him going second round. I mean, I'm not a McCarthy fan. I don't know why media has been all over him lately. It really doesn't make sense to me. I mean, there was so much doubts, and then Combine happened, and I mean, it's the Combine. How many people do good in the Combine and then don't do good in the NFL? I just am not a McCarthy fan. I probably won't draft him in a single league this year. I could be proven wrong, so if I am wrong, you guys can rub it in my face. But whatever.
I don't disagree, Mason. I'm not huge on him, as if that wasn't obvious from the breakdown. But I think in a super flex with the top 15, very likely top 10 draft capital that he's going to have, he's just going to hold his value. That he's going to get multiple opportunities. I mean, look, it took Sam Darnold going to a backup and then coming back. He could be the starter for the Vikings. You get drafted that high as a quarterback, you hold your value generally longer than any other player. You get more opportunities. It is a quarterback-starved league. I've got him in between 108 to 111, and it really just kind of depends on team need and where he does end up. But I think if he goes to the Vikings, obviously that's going to be the best landing spot, and he could even inch up a nudge higher, maybe 107.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, all right, so let's get some landing spots here, and I'm gonna ask for who would you rather take given the landing spot. Let's say, all right, so JJ McCarthy will follow the rumors. Vikings trade up and they grab him. Let's say that Bo Nix ends up going to the Broncos at the what is it, the 12th spot? The 12th spot. And then let's say that Penix goes to Las Vegas at 13. With those landing spots, who would you rather have? Penix with the Raiders, Bo Nix with Denver, or JJ McCarthy with Minnesota?
You guys already know
Dynasty.
the answer. I mean, Bo Nix.
I don't think he would get quite that draft capital, but if Penix gets that draft capital paired with Devontae Adams, I'm the highest on Penix with the 3, so I would go Penix. If Penix falls to the second round, then I probably would have to go with JJ. I'd grit my teeth in drafting.
Yeah, and I'm kind of there with you. Like I like Bo Nix a lot, but if JJ McCarthy does end up going to a spot like the Vikings with JJ, Justin Jefferson, I should, you know, separate the two. But if we got that JJ to JJ hookup there, I do think that is going to be huge for him. He won't have to think too far beyond the first read. We're saying that's one of his biggest issues. But if you have Justin Jefferson on your team with Jordan Addison and eventually a healthy TJ Hawkinson as your second and third reads, I don't think that I basically think that his biggest negatives will be covered up. So this brings us to Drake May. I haven't had too much. Have we talked about Drake yet?
No, we have not.
All right. So this will be potentially the last quarterback we talk about. Maybe we'll get on to Jaden and Caleb for a quick recap. We have already talked about them in past episodes. So if you're interested and we didn't get to them, make sure to check out the YouTube channel. We got them all listed there with in-depth breakdowns, like 30-minute breakdowns on both of those players. So let's get to Drake May, 6'4", 223, 21 and a half years old, coming out of North Carolina. Lee, I know you want to talk about this boy, so I'm going to kick it to you first. What you got for the positives here?
Everything.
Everything. You heard it here first.
If you build a quarterback, if you're a mad scientist in a lab and you're building a prototypical NFL quarterback that you want to draft, Drake May is what it spits out. Like you just mentioned his size. He's quick for that size. He's very intuitive when he's running the ball, more than what you would think, at 6'4" and that weight. His arm strength is phenomenal. Ton of velocity when he's throwing outside the numbers and down the field. You've got those out routes that are some of the toughest routes for any quarterback to throw, and he can just deliver it on a dime, stick the football in your hands. You don't even have to catch it. Off platform, under pressure, he has a lot of improv ability, and his accuracy on all 3 levels. He's got great touch when he throws the ball. The guy, he's still very raw. He's still very young. He only 2 seasons starter in college, but I'm blown away that anybody would think of drafting JJ McCarthy over this guy. To be honest with you, I'm still firmly in the camp that I don't want to draft Jaden Daniels over him either. I think Drake has that combination of floor and ceiling that you're looking for, and I could see him being an all-pro type quarterback, a 15-year career, win multiple Super Bowls. And that might be a little hyperbole, but he's my guy.
I like it. Mason?
I would draft Jaden Daniels over him just because rushing, obviously Drake May can rush the ball, but Jaden Daniels just provides a lot more. And fantasy-wise, that does produce more points. But as far as pros for Drake May, he's got great accuracy on all three levels, not just short, intermediate, or deep. He does all three. He's for his size, he's got great speed. So, he might be able to run through some dudes. Obviously, as you get older in the league, that fades away. And he can handle pressure great. He doesn't collapse when, people are blitzing. I really like Drake May. I think as far as long term, he might be one of the better quarterbacks in this draft. I'm still a little higher on Caleb, but I mean, I think Jaden Daniels is better in short term, but Drake May long term might be one of your guys.
Yeah, I mean, you guys touched on a lot of the positives there. I think that the rushing upside is sneaky. In his first 2 years his last 2 years with North Carolina,
Only
801 yards rushing and 582 yards rushing, a combined 15 touchdowns on the ground in that time. That is impressive numbers. That's going to offer you a strong baseline. Not to get ahead of myself, but he gives me a lot of Justin Herbert vibes. The guy, and that's no slouch. I feel like there's some, negative feelings towards Justin Herbert right now just because of the combination of Harbaugh and Greg Roman being brought in, both classically run first offensive schemes. So may it be the negative vibe towards Justin Herbert. I think Drake May is that dude. He's super young, 21 and a half years old, has all of the arm talent in the world. Like Lee said, he's an improviser. The guy's gutsy. He's going to take a shot while still delivering a ball downfield. You guys can watch this on any of his highlight tapes out there, but he has this one play. He is taking on one defender. He ends up stiff arming the guy with the right arm, switches the ball to his left hand, and throws a touchdown with his left hand. Incredible. Obviously that's not going to weigh into a consistent measure of fantasy output. But that's the stuff you like to see from your guy. Just doing whatever it takes to get the job done. And like you guys already mentioned, the accuracy from all levels. He's got a great base. He consistently uses his base to deliver the ball downfield. And with a 6'4" frame, that's gonna deliver a lot of velocity. So let's move on to the negatives. If you have any, Lee, I'm interested to hear them.
And in full disclaimer, I mean, you guys see me, in my Carolina stuff, most weeks if I'm not wearing Washington stuff. I watched every game that he played in college. So, I saw some of the negative. And the biggest thing is he can make some boneheaded mistakes. The Clemson game this past year where he forced a throw that he never should have been thrown inside the 10-yard line, and it goes back the other way for a touchdown. He can make a bad sack worse, limiting some of those mistakes. I think, honestly, that the biggest negatives are that they come from his youth. Again, only 2 seasons that he played. I don't think there's any other quarterback who has that small amount of experience that we're talking about as far as these top 5-6 guys. I mean, a lot of the guys we're talking about are 24 years old and played 12 years in college, Bo Nix. But having only played 2 seasons, the potential is just so high. And a lot of times you are drafting for potential, not necessarily college production. Obviously, you like to see a good production profile, but you want to see, these draft evaluators, these scouts want to see what could be. And that's really what's there. The other real negative, and again, I think this comes with youth and lack of experience, but he can be confused. If a defense switches things up pre-snap, it caused problems. He struggled with NC State, which was a very good, very underrated defense this past year. And a lot of what they did to make him struggle were changes right before the snap. False looks, not disguising your coverage and then switching to something at the last second, or having blitzers come from places that are not obvious. That's where he really struggled. But again, I think that's more product of youth than anything. He played 2 seasons in college. He changed offensive coordinators after the first season, and he lost a second-round NFL wide receiver. he got a NFL wide receiver back, but only halfway through the season. So if you look at some of the numbers drop off, I think that's kind of explains that. And again, just the potential is so high. Those things that I mentioned, you can be coached out of. Experience and coaching can work around those.
I got to jump in here just because I saw it. I was reading my notes as Lee was talking about it. When the pre-snap read doesn't line up with the post-snap read, he can struggle, occasionally miss linebackers who are showing blitz but drop into coverage. Like almost word for word, the note that I left here. And then on top of it, I left overall isn't a glaring issue, but something that I saw can trip him up a few times throughout the year. So fully agree with you on that. Just to quickly add the other negatives that I had, the accuracy issues, 16 interceptions in 2 years with North Carolina. Reading through, and we will get more hyper analytical the higher the prospect is. So like I have reading through his progressions, I think he can get frazzled when forced into his third and fourth read. We talked about JJ McCarthy earlier. When he's forced beyond his first read, he can struggle. For Drake May, it's third or fourth. Like you still want to see guys be able to operate when the first and second reads aren't there. But once you're getting to your third read, you're most likely either making a play with your legs or throwing the ball away at the NFL. The blitz is getting to you quick there. And then I had that he has a slightly longer throwing motion as well. I don't think this is something that is quite as bad as like Michael Penix or you know what, I'm blanking on the other one that I had listed there, but just a slightly longer throwing motion. Again, something that can absolutely be sped up by the time he takes his first snap in the NFL. We even saw that with Anthony Richardson last year. So, he's a great talent, and all of the negatives that I mentioned, I do think can absolutely be improved on quickly at the next level.
Yeah, my big negative with him was that kind of worries me is that the only two teams they played this season that finished ranked were two of his worst games. One against Clemson. He went 16 for 36, and, that's pretty poor accuracy. Only 209 yards, one touchdown, and an interception. I don't have the stats off. Maybe he ran the ball a lot that game and made up for it. I don't necessarily have those stats in front of me. And then against NC State, like we were talking about, Lee definitely said, very underrated defense. He had some accuracy problems, only 22 for 38, 254 yards, 2 TDs, which, 2 TDs is good, and then 2 interceptions. So, the higher competition, he maybe did struggle a little bit against, but, that's really my only negative. It's a little worrying, but, he is young. He can improve, and, I don't think he's going to necessarily have the greatest rookie season, but year two, he might have a great one.
I like that. So for the player style comps, Lee, I'll send it your way first.
So, yeah, I think the player style comp is if Justin Herbert and Josh Allen snuck away and had a love child, I think Drake May would be that love child.
That is the most interesting player style comp we've had so far, for sure. A love child. Hold on, you said Justin Herbert and who again?
Josh Allen. He's the love child
And
of
Josh Allen
and Justin Herbert.
You couldn't exclaim your North Carolina fandom more with that comment there. Mason, what do you got?
I got him as a little more agile version of Herbert. His throwing motion and just his general throwing in general just reminds me a lot of Herbert.
Yeah, no, I also had Herbert, and I honestly don't even think it's necessarily like more agile or higher acceleration. I think Herbert has that in him. He just doesn't show it as much as he could because he knows he's got a freaking cannon and great accuracy. So I'm glad that we didn't have Evan on this one. Let's not tell Evan that I said that about Justin Herbert.
One other thing I would just add, and talking about some of the struggles or whatnot, again, and I touched on it, but the lack of talent around him, I feel like, and not to completely crap on Carolina, and again, um, the skill level of a lot of the opponents. I know South Carolina wasn't as good as they've been in some past years, but he played absolutely lights out in that opener in Charlotte to start the season. But if you plug him into that LSU offense with those two top 15 wide receivers, I think you would see a big difference in his stats. Also, the O line didn't play great, which caused some of him having to improvise some of the times he had to. But yeah, he had a great running back and had Tez Walker for half the season, but you'd struggle to find a lot of other high level talent around him on offense. And he still produced at a pretty solid level. I think he would, I'm not going to say match, but I think he'd be pretty close or possibly match Jaden Daniels' stats if he were in that LSU offense.
Yeah, no, I mean that honestly is a great point. I mean, the fact that Drake May is, potential 102, potential 103 on a worse team than Jaden Daniels had, it does say a lot.
Yeah. All right, so let's get to the projected landing spots. This one's not quite as interesting because I don't think any of us have him moving outside of the top three. I do have the Commanders. I do think that they should draft him over Jaden, kind of building on what Lee was saying earlier. I think that he has a higher floor and overall a similar ceiling. Obviously there's the rushing upside that's a little bit higher in wow, I just said his name 2 times. Jaden Daniels. But I overall I do think that from a passing standpoint, which is what you're relying your quarterback to do, I think that Drake May offers the higher floor in that capacity. So I would personally take Drake May at 102 if I am the Commanders. But what do you think, Mason? I'll send it your way. We'll save the Commanders fan for last.
I mean, I think the smart thing would be to do Drake May, but if the Commanders feel like they're more ready to kind of compete, which I don't think they are, sorry, Lee, but yeah, I mean, it. I think if they do think they're ready to compete, they will take Daniels. But if they are more in it for the long terms, I think May is the better option. He might have a rough rookie season, but I think year 2, year 3, May is going to be what we all want him to be.
Yeah.
So one, let me say, I know we've talked a little bit about the rumors. There's been a lot of rumors going around, a lot of talk. There were a couple of prominent journalists who said that right now the Commanders are expected to take J.J. McCarthy second. If that happens, obviously I've got to give it a chance as a lifelong fan, but I will break something on draft night. Hopefully not my largest TV. Maybe we'll go in the spare bedroom and break that one. But it's got to be Drake. I like the potential for Jaden Daniels, but again, the talent around him, some of the downs in college, and again, this is pros and cons with that experience. Is you have a lot more tape. We've seen a lot lower points for Jaden Daniels. He did take that huge step up this year, but just the overall baseline of play, Drake has shown me everything I need to see out of the number 2 pick. And with those just 2 years, with his age, no injury history at all, he's my guy to build around for the next decade to 15 years. If it's Jaden, I'll get behind it and be very enthusiastic about it. But my heart and my head say it needs to be Drake at 2.
All right.
I got to jump in, but what's your reaction to my Bo Nix?
All right, so I could have seen that in a world before we traded away Sam Howell. I think it's the clearest indication possible that when you're trading away your young prospect and you're bringing in freaking Marcus Mariota, aloha, you're drafting a quarterback at 2. I mean, I think it would have
to means both high and buy. So which one are you saying to? I feel like I know.
So I feel like that's the clearest indication that they're staying at 2. I mean, I think you're always listening to offers, but I think it would have to be a Herschel Walker type trade, a Ricky Williams type trade where somebody just completely sells out their future to move up to 2 to get Washington to move out of it right now.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, I don't think Bo Nix ends up going to the Commanders. I think that he's enough of interest to be selected in the late first round. That then again, there's not a ton of teams in the late first round that really need a quarterback. Uh, you know, Starting at pick 22, you got Philadelphia, Minnesota, Dallas, Green Bay, Tampa Bay, Arizona, Buffalo, Detroit, Baltimore, San Fran, and Kansas City. Obviously, Minnesota needs a guy, but we're all expecting that by at least pick 11, where their actual pick is, they will be taking their quarterback of choice. If they end up moving up, then obviously they don't get their guy, and none of the rest of them have a glaring quarterback need. Maybe Tampa Bay drafts him if he's still there somehow, or not somehow. I think Bo Nix will probably be there around 26 or so. But I don't see a world where the Commanders are able to get him in the second round. And Lee, again, thank you for shedding light on that. I did not know that if teams tied, then it then rotated in the next round. That was news to me. So that's helpful to know for the future. And with those teams rotating in that next round, it's going to be a bit dicey. New England's also been rumored to trade back at 3. Arizona, they have Kyler Murray, but they could use either as trade bait if one of them is there. And then, the Giants, even at the 106, they aren't on the same. They're not in that rotation that you were talking about. But the Giants could absolutely surprise some people and reach for somebody that they have no business reaching for, because that is the Giants' way. So overall, I am the most interested in seeing where these last 3 quarterbacks land in Drake May, Jaden Daniels, and Caleb Williams is a little bit obvious. But if, let's say, that Jaden Daniels goes to the Commanders and Drake May goes to the Patriots, would you draft Jaden Daniels over Drake May? And if they flipped, would you then take whoever the Commanders take in a dynasty superflex?
More
Sometime
than
to
likely, yes,
ponder.
I would. I mean, the issue there is we all know the super heavy running quarterbacks are a bit of a cheat code, specifically if you're in a league that only gives 4 points for passing touchdowns. Um, I'm firmly in the camp that we need to move passing touchdowns back to 6. It shouldn't be a cheat
Yeah.
code.
Lee, hold on really quick. Bring this up while Mason or while Evan's on the podcast.
Okay.
He's so firmly against it in that like rushing quarterbacks deserve the edge or whatever. All all touchdowns from a quarterback should be 6 points.
100%. There should, and the biggest thing with it is it's a cheat code. It's broken. That look at Tim Tebow's fantasy value when he was playing.
Right.
Look at Daniel Jones a couple of years ago, how valuable he was.
Late career Cam Newton.
Fantasy should, at its finest, at its peak, should replicate the NFL and its values as much as possible. That's why Superflex has become so popular, because in single quarterback leagues, quarterbacks are so undervalued. It doesn't mirror a real life NFL experience. That's my argument for Superflex as well. I feel like Superflex is the way to go. I don't really do many leagues that aren't. But the brokenness of how valuable, and right now, I mean, I'll point out that there's a debate still going on in the fantasy community. Is Anthony Richardson? Would you trade CJ Stroud for Anthony Richardson? Nobody would do that in the real NFL, but there's at least a discussion in fantasy because of how broken the rushing quarterback stats are.
100%.
CJ Stroud should be clearly in front of Anthony Richardson right now in fantasy because we know he is in the real NFL.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree with you more there. And Mason, where do you stand on this side of it? So I know if I get the numbers against Evan next time he's on the pod.
I honestly never really take quarterbacks that have a major rushing upside because I don't like it. I mean, I'm a guy who I respect the passing a lot more. Obviously, you can't deny what people like Lamar and Jalen can do. But I think that them doing, if they throw up 200 passing yards, 100 rushing yards, I think it's the same amount of respect to them as someone who throws up 300 passing yards.
That's interesting to me. Because I'm in this game to get as many points as possible, and I will 100% hit on the rushing point totals that you get. So like I'm just looking, I just pulled up Jalen Hurts last year. So he had 605 yards on the ground and 15 rushing touchdowns. If you're in a league where there's a 2 point differential between passing touchdowns and rushing touchdowns, that's 15 times two. That's 30 points alone off of rushing touchdowns that you now have gained because it's a rushing touchdown. And to Evan's point, the whole thing that he makes, and we even talked about it last offseason before it started. We brought in a guy that is both a fantasy analyst and a physical therapy in his day job. And he was talking about how there is no higher risk for rushing quarterbacks, even though they are, they're going to take a few more tackles. Generally speaking, they understand when they're going to take the big hit and they either slide or they give up their body in a way, kind of like Tyler Lockett. If you guys if you guys watch any Tyler Lockett film from the last 2 years, the guy's just gonna give up when he sees two defenders coming in on him. Like, all right, this is where I end. I'm not getting any more yards, and I'm gonna extend my NFL career and my paychecks by just taking a dive. I think that's similar to quarterbacks in fantasy. And on top of it, they get ridiculous penalties coming their way if they ever touch somebody that is not fully given up. So I do think that overall, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, guys that offer a rushing upside like Jaden Daniels do offer the higher floor. However, from an NFL perspective, I'm taking Drake May all day over Jaden Daniels to give my wide receivers the shot of producing. And on top, it's not like you guys have the most efficient offensive line here where they're really going to produce a ton extra on the ground for a rushing quarterback. So that is going to do it. I threw in a comment here on the YouTube channel. We have already talked exclusively, again, 30 minutes at least on each of the next quarterbacks we would have covered, Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams. If you have any interest in seeing an in-depth breakdown on either of those quarterbacks, check out the link that we dropped in the comments. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop it in the comments. I'll make sure to wrap back around, answer any questions that we have here. But everybody, this has been fun breaking down some rookie quarterbacks. Next week, we're going to move on to the wide receivers, running backs after that, and then tight ends plus, because let's be real, Brock Bowers is the only the only one worth drafting. So we will be back with more rookie breakdowns in the next few weeks. And then we got the rookie. We're going to do a full NFL draft rather than a rookie draft. We're going to do a full NFL draft from GM standpoints. Make sure to check it out. Visit the YouTube channel at Stadium Rant. Have a good week, everybody.